Hey, what is up guys? It's Nine here coming with a new video. I know it's been a while, but today we're going to be talking about finding the best optimal sensitivity for you in Valorant. Now, honestly, finding the best sensitivity for you is very crucial in any FPS game, whether it be CSGO, Valorant, Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, or any game like that. Finding the sensitivity that works for you will allow you to play at your best level and allow you to gain consistency. So it's very important, before you put in a lot of practice and such, that you really take the time and try to figure out what sensitivity best works for you. And so I'm going to try and break down everything you really need to know and how you can go about looking for the best sensitivity that will work for you. So there are a couple of things we need to settle first, and that's DPI. And if you don't know what DPI is, it stands for dots per inch, which is essentially a measurement of how much your cursor moves on screen in relationship to how much your arm moves in real life. And then of course most pros will have their DPI set anywhere between 400 to 800, usually 400 or 800. That's pretty standard. You'll see some go 1,000, maybe a little bit over 1,000. The highest I usually see is about 1,600. You don't really see pros with DPI numbers over 1,600. And then of course we have to talk about also your in-game sensitivity, which is slightly different for every game. You'll notice that most pros usually have something like 800 DPI that they keep across, any multiple FPS games they play, but in each game they'll have a slightly different sensitivity, and that is because each game's sensitivity multiplies slightly differently against your DPI. So your sensitivity in Valorant could be 0.65 like mine, but if I want to transfer that directly to a game like Overwatch, I might have to change it to like 0.7, just because the multiplier in Overwatch is a little bit different. And this is where the term eDPI comes in, which stands for effective dots per inch. And what your eDPI essentially is your DPI multiplied by your in-game sensitivity. So that way, when you hear of somebody's eDPI, you can get an idea of what their true sensitivity is, if you will. So for me, I use an in-game sensitivity of 0.65 with a DPI of 800, which makes my eDPI 520. And if you know your in-game sense and DPI, you can quickly run a check just to get an idea of where you're at. But I'll tell you right now that the main sensitivity of pros in Valorant is anywhere from 200 to 400. So it's mostly on the lower side, which is not very surprising. So for me, I have it at 520. I'm definitely on the higher side, but I'm not significantly higher, I would say. For some, they would consider that pretty significantly higher, but I don't think it's that much crazy. And there are a couple of pros who are also in this range. One that comes to mind is Hiko from 100 Thieves. He actually has like an eDPI of like 560 or 570, so even higher than me. And he's a top tier player playing at the highest level. So definitely, you don't need low sensitivity to be very good or go pro or anything like that. It's really about being comfortable with the sensitivity you have, right? But of course, there's a limit to how high you want to go. You don't want an eDPI of 1,000 plus or something like that, because then you're really on the high end and your precision will just significantly drop once you're too high, right? So how do you go about finding the best eDPI for you? Well, there are a couple of things you need to figure out, and that is how much mousepad space you're working with, which is very crucial. If you have a larger mousepad, obviously you can have lower sensitivity because you have more surface area, more room to work with. If you have a smaller mousepad, kind of like me, then you're definitely going to want to have a higher sensitivity, because that's all you're kind of allowed to use when you have less surface area. You kind of need that higher sensitivity. So one good rule of thumb to find the benchmark is to put your mouse on one side of your mousepad and then swing your mouse all the way to the other side of the mousepad. And what you want to do there is a singular 360. Why is that? Well, if you can do one 360 from end to end on your mousepad, that means that you will be able to look behind you and in any direction without having to lift your mousepad off of your lifting your mouse off of your mousepad, Oh gosh, I'm getting messed up with my words, but you guys get the idea. Basically, that means if somebody is directly behind me, I'll be able to flick to them behind me without having to lift my mouse off of the mouse pad. If my sensitivity is too low and I hear somebody behind me and I swing my mouse all the way to the right and I stop here instead of here, then that's going to be a problem, because if I need to get to the target here but my mouse pad caps out here, then that means that I'll have to lift my mouse off the pad, put it in the center, and then find the target, which is very slow, very inefficient. So you want to follow this 360 rule, I guess you could say, where you do one character spin with it. You do one 360, one character spin from end of mouse pad to the other end of the mouse pad, and that way you'll be able to find targets without having to physically reset your mouse. So when you run this test, you can find a good benchmark for where you want to set up your sensitivity. And for me, I ended up at around 0.65 in-game sensitivity with about 800 DPI. Now, once you find that, you don't necessarily have to stay exactly at that. If you want, you could up your sensitivity a little bit slightly, just because a lot of people don't actually want to push their mouse directly to the edge of the pad. They want to have like a little bit of breathing room. So if you up your sensitivity a little bit, you'll be able to do slightly above a 360 from end to end, and that just gives you a little bit more room to work with. You won't have to push your mouse directly to the end of each side of the pad. Or if you want to go in the opposite way and give yourself a little bit more precision, what you can do is lower it slightly. That way you won't do a full 360, but honestly, sometimes you don't necessarily need it. And it'll give you slight more precision, so it's a trade-off you can also look for. Okay, so once you find, follow the 360 rule, you've adjusted it slightly higher or slightly lower depending on what you're kind of looking for, then the question then becomes like, well, what if I feel like my sense is too high even if I follow these rules, or I feel like my sense is too low? What is better, high or low sense? And honestly, the answer to this question is neither, really. What you need to understand between high and low sense is that there is a trade-off. There is a very distinct trade-off. With low sensitivity, you have high levels of precision. You'll be able to track targets a little bit easier, and you'll be able to keep your cursor on them definitely easier with low sensitivity. But with faster sensitivity, obviously you're gonna have speed, so you'll be able to check corners a lot faster. If somebody starts spraying you from the left, you'll be able to react faster. If you have low sensitivity, it'll be a lot harder for you to, flick onto somebody's head or something like that. There's just it's limiting how fast you can react. So obviously, higher sensitivity, you're gonna be a lot faster. You can check angles a lot faster. You can react to plays a lot faster. You can react to footsteps and players a lot faster. But with lower sensitivity, you're definitely gonna have a more distinct level of precision. So that's the trade-off you always want to look at. So to find the optimal sensitivity, you want to put your sensitivity at the fastest available speed where you still feel like you can control your cursor. So for me, like I said, that's 0.65 with 800 DPI. With this, I'm pretty fast. I'm higher than the pro average, but I also feel like I have a pretty decent amount of control with this sensitivity. And honestly, it just comes down to a lot of practice. Even if you feel like your sense is a little bit too fast or maybe a little bit too slow, once you practice enough, you're gonna, the muscle memory will build itself. And so for me, I'm on, higher than normal sensitivity, and yeah, I can, for sure, my precision won't be as good as, people with 400 EDPI or less, but I'm definitely gonna have more speed, be able to react a little bit faster. Plus, I feel like it's not too fast where I just completely lose control of my gun with any little movement of my arm. And yeah, so that's how I came up with my sense, which is 0.65 by 800. Most of you will probably go for something slower than that. I would expect. I would actually rarely see somebody with sensitivity as high as mine. Usually, they're in that 2 to 400 EDPI range. So that's pretty much it. I hope this guide gave you guys an idea of how you really should go about finding your sensitivity. how you should, the things you need to be thinking about when you're fine tuning and adjusting your sensitivity. And at the end of the day, guys, once you find your sensitivity, just stick with it. Do not go changing your sensitivity too much just because you feel like it. Just because, you know, one day you feel like all your shots are off, so you're just gonna completely change your sensitivity. I never recommend that. Once you find like a good sensitivity, just practice every day, and eventually the muscle memory will build and you'll find consistency. If you're changing your sensitivity every week, you'll never find consistency. Your aim just won't be able to build the way you want it to. And with that, that's it, guys. Just a video, you know, help find your sensitivity. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.